So I was talking about my second positive, which is how good the acting is in this movie, despite the fact that I don't like Kevin Costner. Mm-hmm. I gotta give him a pass on this one. He does a good job. Everyone, as I just mentioned, everyone sells their performance very well. I was never taken out of the movie. It was a good job. I can't even think of a single instance of bad acting in this movie.
Yeah, no, I didn't notice any.
In an hour of a movie of 3 hours, that's impressive.
Yeah. Speaking of acting, I'm interested, since it's one of your positives, Tommy Lee Jones as Clay Shaw was actually nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
As Shaw. No, I don't see that. I don't
either. I was going to agree. Yeah.
He does a good job, but he's not given enough platform for him to shine in that way. Yeah, he just he has that one scene where he's interrogating him, and everything else is very superficial.
His character is kind of written not to really give him much room.
I mean, he does participate in that gay orgy that happens, but other than that. I mean, in the interrogation, he's believable. Don't get me wrong, he did a good job. Yeah, he did a great job.
He's just not maybe not Oscar.
It's not Oscar.
Not that he did not win. He was nominated. Maybe there was a lack of great supporting roles.
Maybe there was, but I just don't think. I don't think there was enough material for him to shine in that way.
Yeah, like Costner, obviously. He has so much more to. So I'll bounce off you. Watch out with the acting real quick. One of my standout performances was the wife. I really thought she was very. Her emotions really came across as believable.
Oh yeah,
and her acting, obviously, that was great. Spacek, the actress, she's a great actress.
And the kid actors did a good job too.
So Garrison has 5 kids, I think it says in the movie, and there's some really tender scenes with them interacting with the father when he's he's kind of all. Him and his wife are having some fights and stuff, and there's some good scenes with him and the kids, being everything's gonna be all right and everything. And so the child actors were good.
This reminded me of To Kill a Mockingbird. And Kevin Costner reminded me of Atticus.
With the kids,
and
he's a lawyer too.
And with the final scene and everything. Yeah. And just the sort of the themes of truth and justice. Yeah.
But another performance I really enjoyed, honestly, is Kevin Bacon as Willie O'Keefe, the male prostitute who was one of the key witnesses on the side of Garrison. Yeah. And he's just this really I love that lot. The scene, obviously, his main scene is when he's in prison and they come to visit him, and he's just this real charismatic dude. Obviously, he's he does. You know what he does. He's a male prostitute. So he's kind of this interesting guy, and he's but I love the line, and it kind of goes with some of the themes of the movie, which we'll talk about. What he's they have to know why. They must know why he was killed. And it's just he's very charismatic in the role. It fit the character that they wrote. It does, the dialogue and the character and the acting went hand in hand.
It did, and I loved his performance. He did a great job. It does seem like a lot of gayness makes its way into Oliver Stone's movies.
Yeah. Well, here I didn't think it was.
No, here's the thing. This movie,
that was part of the case. I think
that's what I was about to say. This was very natural. This was very natural. This didn't really jump out at you. I think that Oliver Stone showed a lot more restraint in this movie. Yeah, and was much more sensitive with that issue, and it shows. Yeah. It's much better.
And then also a couple other acting performances I really love. Obviously, Kevin Costner's great. The accent is not the best, but it's not too distracting to me. But I thought he really got the emotions of the character right, and he seemed believable. He's playing this real life individual, and I would think that I think he did a pretty good job of showing the emotions and the feelings and the distress, especially because this guy's under a lot of kind of under the gun, and he's everybody hates him once he brings his case forward and everything.
Costner doesn't overact in this movie.
He doesn't overact. Sometimes that's his thing. He does overact a lot in movies,
but he doesn't overact in this movie.
This is I think my top 3, maybe 5. One of his for him. This is my top one of my top 5 movies that he's done, for sure. And then finally, the other actor performance I wanted to highlight was Joe Pesci as David Ferry, who is another one of the main conspirators that they think is part of the conspiracy. And he's played by Joe Pesci, as I said, who's the dude from Home Alone, and as one of the bandits, and he's been in a lot of good movies. As he's always this very foul-mouthed individual, except in Home Alone, because he's still a foul individual, but they couldn't have him say as many F-bombs. Yeah. But so this guy, in every movie he's in, he usually says 50 F-bombs on his own. But that's just the character. And it fit the character, because he is this crazy, he's kind of he almost feels like he's like kind of schizophrenic in the movie. You know, he's just
really
like
scared,
he is a scared guy because he you know, you don't ever he's like, you know, once they put out that he's part of the investigation, you know, obviously he dies and they assume it's suicide, although Garrison isn't fully convinced of that. Right. And but yeah, Joe Pesci, as usual, did a fantastic job with his character. You know, it's just this kind of gangster-esque type dude who's also kind of gay, it appears, like he's part of it. Anyway, he did a good job. Joe Pesci did a good job. Anyway.
John Michael, you got any more thoughts to the positive?
You got a third big positive you'd like to highlight?
I do. I mean, I have two more, but I guess they kind of...
Just shoot them at it.
They go in hand. I guess maybe the first one was the respect they showed for JFK. Whether you like him or not, I personally don't, but the respect they showed for the office of the presidency and JFK, and then also the power of politics.
Okay, elaborate, explain a little bit, just in specific.
For the power of politics.
Or either one.
They were really careful. You know, of course, they showed video and footage of what he looked like, but they were very specific in the good things that he did. And the way we presented him, they didn't really say anything negative, or they didn't portray anything negative about him.
We just really gave you the facts.
That's right. Yeah. Personally, I appreciate that. If you're going to give, especially a historical assassination movie, is essentially what it was.
Yeah.
So, and then the power of politics goes along with, you could really feel the corruption. Absolutely, you could feel that, but then you could also sense how much power the government can actually have in situations in the way they explain it.
For sure.
A lot of people don't realize that, and the way they portrayed it, I think it was very specific and detailed, and you could notice it. So it was, for me, I noticed that.
Well, what's your third big positive?
Okay, so my final big positive I'll talk about is the production design in this movie.
Okay,
yeah, which is really good.
You get to see a lot of cool places.
Yeah, I mean, there's sets that they did felt really lived in. They were, a lot of them were impressively big. Yeah. So it looked like 1960s, but it was like big 1960s. Yeah. That's hard to pull off sometimes. Lots of different locations. You know, they filmed some cool locations in D.C. and near the Lincoln Memorial, and then just make that look 1960s too, which was really cool. The outfits were great. Really just impressed with the immersion there.
Yeah, one set I really liked was specifically was the like just like the Garrison's like house. It feels very 1960s, like mansion, like what a DA would be living in.
Yes,
it's like
in Louisiana.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, I'll go ahead while we wait on Nate, who I think went to the bathroom. But I wanted to ask you one thing about the power of politics, and this we'll kind of get this more into his section. Yeah. But it's obviously like some of the like claims that they were making, like the Garrison, and also the movie inherently, because it's about his story, about like Lyndon Johnson and stuff. Like obviously they thought it was like a big power struggle going on.
Coup is what.
A coup. I mean, he says the coup. But since Nate's back, we'll wait and get to that in his
right. Yeah.
I just wanted to, maybe you can be thinking about that.
Oh yes.
But anyway, I'll go with my last couple of positives. The cinematography is really good, and this kind of goes along once again with the editing and how they incorporated so many real life footage, but they were really able. There's a lot of just cool shots. There's a lot of cool like wide shots of like the set of the production design of the sets and stuff, like of the houses and of like the Washington Monument and like a lot of other sites in DC. In that scene where he's talking to Mr. X or whatever that guy says his name is. The whistleblower. Anyway, and so yeah, the cinematography was real crisp. There's a lot of cool transitions. The one that stuck out to me is when Garrison towards the beginning is reading over his like the books and everything, and it like transitions and it'll go to black, and then it'll be in like a different setting, and then it would go. It would usually be like some of the real life footage or something. And then it would go back to black and then back to Garrison, and that was a really cool little filmmaking.
You know what
technique.
Is great about the cinematography is that not even once did I hear it go.
Oh, that's an inside joke. The last movie we watched, there was a terrible example.
there was none of that.
Oliver Stone, man. Yeah, you didn't do it this time. Anyway, but the cinematography was quite good in this movie. A lot of great wide shots and a lot of just cool transitions. You also didn't see it expand out from the middle.
Yeah,
the transitions in this movie were much better, like a lot better. And I think this movie also did win Best Cinematography, so it obviously was acclaimed by a lot of people. And then my other positive is this is kind of 2 in 1. The screenplay combined with like the structure. So I guess that's kind of one thing. I mean, the screenplay is what builds the structure of the movie. I think that first of all, the dialogue. That's what I'm kind of hitting on with the screenplay. The dialogue in this movie is really nice and crisp, and there's a lot of just great scenes that. enable the actors to bring out the emotions of their characters through the dialogue. And there's a lot of like quick back and forth dialogue that hits really well, and the acting obviously just amplifies it and how it comes across. But all I can say is that the dialogue in this movie is really well. It's a well written screenplay from a dialogue standpoint. One of the great dialogue scenes is just when Ferry loses his mind right before he kills himself, and that scene is just like the acting compared to lined up with the dialogue.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. But the acting combined with the dialogue, where he's just like, "It's an enigma, man. It's an enigma wrapped up in a riddle. The shooters don't even know." It's just such it's good dialogue, and it works really well. So the acting and the dialogue really work well hand in hand. And then the other the structure of the movie, I really like how. Since they're telling a story about this guy Jim Garrison who brought forward this case, they needed to obviously make it clear to the audience what his ideas were and what he thought happened. And it does that from the very beginning of the movie with this kind of real life footage part where it goes through Kennedy's history and his history of becoming president and a lot of the major events that happened in his presidency before he gets obviously assassinated. And the very beginning of the movie, though, the very first shot is of Eisenhower's departure. What do they call it? The departure speech?
His farewell address.
Farewell address, where he warns about the military-industrial complex, and that ends up being the main idea. The main claim of Garrison is that the military-industrial complex is that they were part of the conspiracy to assassinate JFK. So it sets up that main idea from the very beginning. Right. And that's the theme throughout the whole movie.
It's not like Alexander where it just sticks up that quote, fortune favors the ball, and never mentions
and that
it
whole
again.
sequence, by the way, was really good. And then with structure, it just kind of moves at a nice pace throughout the movie. Even though it's 3 hours, it's one of the more faster paced 3 hour movies you might ever see. And but I really like how it set up that at the beginning, its main idea, and then obviously it and one of my negatives, I'll kind of I'll have a bad stance on this, but for the most part, it is pretty good at getting a lot of its information across and in a way that people can understand. Like I said, there's gonna be a negative to that as well. But yeah, the structure of the movie was nice. It had a clear beginning and a clear kind of turning point whenever they arrest Clay Shaw, kind of 2/3 into the movie, and then a clear climax where it's with the trial scene, obviously. And so it was a well-structured movie, I thought. Anyway, so all right, so we've hit on most of the big positives. So
you don't have any more, do you, John Michael?
Oh no.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, and if one pops in your mind, you can just throw it out there later. But anyway, negative. So what's a negative of yours on the movie?
We love negatives here on this channel.
The movie's perfect. So what's one of your gripes?
I knew they weren't going to mention it because nobody mentions it, but it's my one big thing that just aggravates me about the JFK conspiracy theory. They didn't give you the whole story. Okay. You think they give you the whole story, but they leave out a very, very, very important person.
This specific conspiracy theory, or
this specific one, and that's JFK's wife.
Okay.
Jacqueline Kennedy. A lot of people don't think about her because she was so innocent. She was very upset, and not that I think she had anything to do with it, because I don't. Yeah. But they leave her out of the picture as well. Some of the things she said privately and publicly. Okay.
So I think we should dive into that in the history.
Yeah, we can talk about what they said her role in it was.
Right. Yes.
But so they kind of. So you think that could have made the movie that could have added a new element to the movie?
It could have,
like the wife, it's just a whole different.
Because there's a whole other conspiracy theory about her, too, that they could have put in.
Okay. So some material they left out that you think they should have included.
Yeah, it would have been cool.
Yeah, it would have. Nate, what about you?
Okay, so Oliver Stone recovers in a lot of aspects in this movie, but some of the same problems that frustrate his other films come back to haunt us in this film. Yeah. And one of those problems is that the film is just too long.
Yeah, it's a bit long.
And now I understand that it's tackling a very large subject matter, and I understand that it's a what would you call it? A very brainy, heady movie. Mm-hmm. I understand that it's complex source, and I understand that we watched the director's cut, so we kind of signed up for this.
It's only 15 minutes.
Having said that, the movie is too long, and not only that, just like in Alexander, most of the scenes are too long. Yeah, they last too long. basically all of the scenes need to be a little bit shorter. And then there's some just obnoxious examples like the ending speech, which should be long. Don't get me wrong. It just shouldn't be that long. And it gets to the place, John talked a lot about this with Alexander. He was like, man, I enjoyed this scene. It was just too long.
It started out good. But then,
it started out good. And I think what Oliver Stone would do good to learn is that there can be too much of a good thing. And so you hit that and then you move on a little bit.
Yeah.
And
what was one specific scene that like really stood out as too long?
Well,
to you?
First the ending speech was just, just so long.
Yeah.
And I was basically thinking that almost every scene was too long.
Yeah, there we are.
Lagging.
Yeah, well, there's so much. I think one reason there are so many long scenes, but by the way, the acting is much better, so it makes those long scenes much more bearable.
It does make it more bearable, and like we talked about this with Alexander, I think this is a good contrast.
Yeah.
That it would like devolve into a screaming match.
Yeah.
And there are arguments that happen in this movie,
they seem real.
But it doesn't feel like this one.
They seem real in this movie.
It does seem real.
They'd really be arguing about that, and obviously acting.
And so if I would have been like advising Oliver Stone or something, I'd have been like, hey, let's just trim it down to like 2.5 hours, maybe 2:45. Even that would make a big difference. Yeah. And then just give the audience a little bit of room to breathe here. And I think you would have a better. I think you would have just a tighter, trimmer, leaner, stronger product.
Was there one scene there that really stood out?
Well, like I said, the ending.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. For me, just to bounce off real quick of that, for me, one of the scenes that went on way too long is the scene with Mr. X.
Oh yeah.
Like I get that dude had a lot of information to give, and that was a real historical figure. Like Garrison did meet a guy that he called himself Professor X, and we can talk about the history. Right. But like that scene, it has a lot of information. It has a lot of information to convey, so it makes sense why it's
45 minutes.
It makes sense why it's a longer scene, but like they could have probably found a way to convey the information in a more concise manner. And I'm going to talk about that with one of my negatives, just the failure at times to deliver information in an understandable way. But anyway.
And they like sit on that park bench for like
half an hour. They walk for like 10 minutes and they sit on the park bench.
And I feel like the cinematography team thought that they were so cool with the shots. They were like, oh, we got the Lincoln Memorial in the background. Oh, we got the Washington Monument in the background.
Here's a negative on the cinema. I like the cinematography for the most part, but they show that same shot of the Washington Memorial with the trees right here and the Washington Memorial right here.
I agree with that.
And they showed it like 4 times in that scene. It was like, that's just lazy. You're just reusing the same shot. But anyway. So I'll give my big negative on the movie, which it's not like terribly bad or anything, but just I think that at times, like in that scene with Mr. I was gonna say Professor X, Mr. X from in Washington D.C. A lot of scenes just have a lot of information to convey. And at times, it's hard to follow at times.
Yes.
Especially if you don't have... I had seen this movie once. Neither of y'all seen it. But you had a little bit of knowledge of this. And Nate, you're pretty much coming in
fresh. So I went in totally blind. So, I did not even know the details of the
So let me give my negative, and then you can... I want to hear how you were able to... How well you were able to follow.
Yeah, I think... But we should contrast me and John Michael's view, because you have like a seasoned veteran and like
so let you have a newbie. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and finish my negative, and then we can do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Just like there's a lot of scenes where there's just... They're at a table, or like Mr. X and him are on a bench or walking to DC, and there's lots of very important information being conveyed. But at times it can be given. It can be given in such a fast and like loose way, that in just such a casual way that it can go over your heads. And sometimes there's not enough context to a lot of the like information we're given. And the worst of all, I think there's a lot of times like. They'll be talking about Lee Harvey Oswald, and then all of a sudden they're talking about some kind of like civil rights thing in Mississippi that they saw Oswald and Shaw at, and it takes you a minute to like be okay. We're talking about a whole different like event that they saw this guy at, and the transferring of scenes at times. In the dialogue is not very is not well done at all.
I would recommend, if you're going to watch this movie, to watch it with subtitles.
Oh yeah, that would
because just to bounce off that. So
and then
did you find it hard to follow, John Michael, knowing the material?
No, I mean I already knew, so I kind of
same thing here.
Once they kind of just started with a certain scene, I kind of knew where it was going to go. You can find a theme.
Yeah. I just think for like film viewers in general, it can be a lot to process the information they're giving us.